Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, John Nieuwenburg. It's great to have you join us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Most excited. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Well, I'm a business coach. What that means in my particular case is I work with small business owners that are typically 1 to 10 team members, a couple to 3 million in sales. They're generally either professional advisors or they're tradespeople. So they're lawyers and health practitioners and wealth advisors. On the other side, they're electricians and plumbers and that kind of thing. What they have in common is they're very good at a trade, very good at a profession, not very good at business. And so, as I sometimes say, I can't help you be a better lawyer. I can't help you be a better electrician, but that's not what you need help with. It took you 7 years to be a lawyer, 5 years to be an electrician. How much business training did you get? Most commonly, the answer to that is next to nothing or zero. So typically, the owners I work with are challenged around time, team, or money. They're saying things like, I've got too much to do and not enough time to do it. I can't get everything done. If I don't do it, it won't get done. When it comes to team, it's recruiting is very difficult. Hiring good people is hard. Getting the culture you want and getting people to do work at the quality that you need. And then the money component has got two sides to it. One side is I need better financials, reporting, KPIs. I need a dashboard. I need to know how to measure results. And the other side of money is I want more money. I need better sales and marketing. So if you're not complaining about one of those things, then we probably don't have a lot to talk about.
I have an economics degree and an MBA. You know what they didn't teach me?
How to run a business?
How to run a business.
Yeah.
So I don't think the education's the answer because it isn't necessarily the answer. They have a lot of great theory, but practical knowledge is missing,
Yeah. MBAs are great. They have a better application in large corporate environments where there's more of that academic or strategic thinking required. There's almost none of that important enough at the kind of businesses that I'm working with.
I don't think it works at the corporate level either. When you
Okay.
dig into them, you'll find that I think they all have the same problem, right? Now, the one thing big corporations have, depending on the corporation, is a lot of times excess money to waste. And they
Hmm.
do waste it, right? They got lucky. They happened to figure out a model. And because they're so big, they can afford an accounting team. They can afford these different things and they can afford them at scale, which actually gives them a lower cost of doing business. But when it comes to the actual things, I don't know that they're any better than a small
Hmm.
business owner or
Sure.
same problems. So let's dig into some of these.
Okay.
My favorite, of course, and what everyone's here for is the money.
Okay.
And I know before we hit record, you were ranting about their CPAs. So let's start there.
Well, I have a rant. After 28 years as a small business coach and after observing what happens, I think there's the observation I'd like to share is the small business community, small business owners are badly served by the accountants who serve small business owners. And I mean that in the sense that that happens because there's missed expectations. So, typical small business, the accountant who serves a small business thinks of their role as I do year end, I do taxes, and I do compliance. That's basically what I do. And small business owners don't really understand many of them don't really understand the numbers, don't really understand what a P&L means and gross margin and some of these other terms. And when they go to their accountant to ask them about it, that's not the accountant's area of expertise, then they don't really know how to answer that. It leaves small business owners frustrated because they're like, I don't understand. I've got lots of stories where, you know, I go to my accountant and I ask, hey, how am I doing? I got cash problems. I don't think I'm profitable. But the accountant says, no, you're fine. And so it's really, I don't mean to point fingers. I'm really saying it's because there's different expectations and the fact that small business owners need someone who helps them understand the numbers, understand a perspective of what a CFO does. If you're in a business of $1 million, you're probably not in a place where you can even get a fractional CFO. And yet you still need that kind of intelligence. And so how do you get it?
And I think that's kind of where the difference between small business and big business is, right? Big business can get that kind of help. And they can afford to pay somebody like that $500,000 because compared to their revenue, that's chump change.
Yeah.
Whereas for a small business owner making a million, 2, 3 million in revenue, they can't afford that guy. Even if
Even
you're at 10 million in revenue, you still probably can't afford that guy.
you can't. I think when you get to 10 million, you should have a fractional CFO. By the time you get to 50 or 100, you're in a place where you probably need your own internal CFO. But the people I'm talking about are less than 3 million. A fractional CFO is just not in the cards for them. And in fact, lots of them wouldn't even know what that means.
Well, and we try and help work with, it depends on the client. We have clients that are below the 3 million mark, and we work with them in a way that they get the guidance they need at a
Mm,
price point that's still reasonable for them. Because for
right,
most of them, the reality is their business isn't that complicated. They
right.
don't need that much help. But once they understand the basics of their business, they're like, "Oh, now that I know this, I know what my marching orders are. I know what I need to focus on and I need to work on." And so it
That's a
becomes
that's a good observation. There's
doable.
the initial phase, which is really about an education and training and understanding. And then there's the ongoing phase where now you've been leveled up in terms of what you know and how to look at it. And now it's a question of analysis and insight and action plans.
And just so they don't feel bad, the $100 million company is still going to struggle to find a good CFO because they're all with the $1 billion companies. So
Yeah. And
the war for talent is always difficult.
yes, it is. At every level, there's always competition.
There is. The other thing that I think most people need, and you mentioned it, is a good dashboard. And once you've
Mm,
got a good dashboard and you know what's going on in your business and how to measure it, I think most business owners are smart enough to know what to fix when they know what to fix. Once they
yeah.
know the problem, they've got great solutions for it, regardless. The
Yeah.
lawyer knows, the plumber knows, show him where the leaks are in his business, and they'll figure out how to do it right.
Yeah, so I agree with that view. The metaphor I like to use is when you get a P&L from the month before or 3 months before, it's the equivalent of trying to look at your business through the rear view mirror of the car. Water under the bridge, it's already happened. There's not much, if anything, you can do about it. So, how do you get to a place where you have information in a way that's timely enough to act on it? Well, that's the meaning, that's the purpose of a dashboard. Am I going to run out of gas? Am I going past the speed limit? And in business, what that means is what are the 3, 4, 5 KPIs, key performance indicators that if they're not right, I know that the P&L is not going to look good when I see it a month from now. What are those? Every business is a little bit different, but that's the value of a dashboard is I need to know today what I can be doing tomorrow to affect the results that I'm going to expect to see on my P&L whenever I get it, likely a month from now.
And that's exactly what it is all about, is that. The other issue that I know a lot of small businesses have is generating revenue. It always
Mm,
seems like it's a balance between how do we get more revenue and then how do we deliver this? And then, oh, wait, I forgot to get more revenue. Oh, wait, I've got to deliver this. And that back and forth of those two areas.
yeah. So a lot of business owners at the size that we're talking about kind of run their business by the seat of their pants. And when you do, you fall in that trap of, oh, I got to get more customers. And then you start getting so busy that you don't have time to go get customers because you're scrambling to keep up. Well, how do you get ahead of the curve? Well, let me tease you a little bit. Would you get on an airplane if you knew the pilot didn't have a navigation plan? In other words, a plan from how to get from here to there. Of course not. That'd be appalling to think about. Well, would you run a business without a map that tells you what your revenue is going to be over the next 12 months? And as a result of that, you would know what marketing needs to take place to support that revenue plan. And because of that, you would know what your team or organization or delivery plan would have to be to match those two things and to keep them in proportion so that you're not running this sort of seesaw of I'm chasing customers, but I don't have enough help. And now I've got too much help because I stopped chasing customers. Well, how do you get that in balance? You got a plan, you got a forecast. You have to think about a map of how I'm going to do that over the next 12 months and then execute against that plan.
And I find when you're building a plan like that, it's important to understand the financials in the sense of, do we have revenue coming in that then needs to be delivered? And do I have the delivery personnel or the
Exactly.
production capacity for that particular time period to be
Yes.
able to do that? So I know how to say yes and no. And it doesn't matter whether you're an attorney or a plumber, both of them have the same underlying issues. They just call it something different, or it's
Exactly.
just slightly differently labeled.
Yeah.
And so having the plan and planning the delivery goes along with planning the cash. And when you have that complete scenario, it becomes easier to make those decisions and to also decide which work gets done before other work and how do they all flow together.
If you're flying in the fog, it's hard to know which way to go. If you've got a map and a dashboard, you can then pick your route and know that you can follow it instead of just hoping that you're going to fly in the fog and make it okay.
In order to fly an airplane on instruments, you have to know how to read the instruments.
That's exactly right. Yes, that's the point.
Yeah.
Exactly. You have to have the instruments. You have to know how to use them.
Correct. And I think the issue is there are probably a lot of different kinds of airplanes. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of cars.
Sure.
In a car, the dashboards are all basically the same, right? The
Mhm.
gas gauge, the speedometer. But for every business, their dashboards are different and they have to be customized to them. And then you have to know how to read your dashboard.
Yeah, exactly right. So the principle is you need to have a dashboard. Then secondly, what's the right set? What's the right combination of KPIs or the inputs that I'm looking for so that I can reasonably anticipate the results I'm going to get and the changes that I need to make?
So, one of the things I know you like to work with and help business owners on is systematizing businesses for scale without burnout. I
Yeah,
call that make more, work less.
yes, yeah. Well, that's the definition of leverage, right? Getting more done with less. So I like to use a bit of a metaphor to explain this. Business ought to be a three-legged stool. A successful business has three legs of a stool. So the first leg is systems run the business, people run the systems, you lead your people. And why that matters is if you have people running your business, then your business rises and falls on the quality of the people. If systems run the business, then the people can come and go and the business is still um, supported. So let me give you a little bit of an example and a bit of a tease. How do they get those French fries to taste the same in your town or mine? The fries are made by a 16-year-old, and the parents of the 16-year-old can't get that person to clean their bedroom. They have great systems. They have recipes. Now, I know you're sitting out there and well, we don't make fries in your business. No, you don't. I get that. But here's the thing, the principle, the concept of systems run the business, people run your systems, you lead your people, that is universal and gets applied in whatever the right set of circumstances are for you. So that's the first leg. The second leg of a stool is about 85% of what happens in a business ought to be routine. This is how we make fries. About 15% of the time, stuff happens. Okay. So about 85% ought to be systematized. There's standard operating procedures, there's SOPs, there's checklists, this is how we do it. And then the third leg of the stool is we never look for a people solution. We look for a system solution. So one day we run out of potatoes and we're phoning Rocky at 10 o'clock at night. Rocky's the store manager. Oh my gosh, I don't have potatoes. What do we do? And we figure out an answer in the moment. But when Rocky shows up the next day, what we're thinking is, what would the system have to be so when we run out of potatoes, I don't get a phone call at 10 o'clock at night because the team can work out what the right solution is. So leg one is systems run the business, people run the systems, you lead people. Leg two is systematize the routine, humanize the exception. 85% of business is systems, 15% is human or mistakes. And then the third leg of the stool is we look for systems answers, never people answers when problems occur. And that is true whether as you scale, that principle applies no matter where you are in the process of scaling your business. The application changes, of course, but the principle stays the same.
I find most business owners are not great at building systems.
That's right.
So how do they do that if they're not great at building them?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is it's kind of a mindset thing, first of all. And the first part of the mindset is to recognize that what I've been doing up until now got me this far, but it isn't working today. And so I need to find a different solution. And so then, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so the first thing is, okay, I know what I've been doing up until now is not working, and I can't continue this way. So how do I solve that? Let me help you understand how systems can work. The other thing is that a lot of the owners I work with started off as technicians, to use an E-Myth term. They're electricians. That's what they know how to do. And then they get a helper, and then business is getting better, and they hire a second Red Seal electrician, and now they have 2 trucks and 3 trucks and 5 trucks. All of them are, have electricians or Red Seal electricians and apprentices. And at some point, what got them to 2 trucks breaks when they have 5, 6, or 7 trucks. Because now what worked at 2 trucks isn't capable of having them run the business when it's 7. So you got to recognize it. I'll tell you a story about that. I have a client who operated a factory, and that factory had 2 shifts. So the first shift started at 6, and the last one finished at 10. This client had about an hour's commute. So at 10 o'clock, he would drive home, get home around 11:30, and then he needed to be back in the factory for 6 o'clock. So he's getting up at 4:30 and in order to be at the factory. That wasn't very tenable. So he was sleeping on the couch in his office 3 nights a week. And he did that for 10 years because, he was a tough guy, persevering, hard-nosed. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to make it work. Until one day, his wife said to him, "Your business is your mistress. If you don't do something about that, I will." And that's when he realized, okay, I can't pay that price. I'm willing to work 80 hours a week. I'll pay that price, but I'm not willing to let that affect my life and my marriage. And that's when this guy thought, I got to do something different. What changes do I need to make so that I can be home at night? So it's the shift in mindset. It was the recognition of a problem. To go back to your question, what causes business owners to say, I need to change? When it's so difficult, so painful, that change is actually an easier path forward.
Not to mention, she was going to get half the business.
Well, that's probably a fact, yes, and that might have been something about it.
Yeah.
I never thought of that part of it. I can say pretty comfortably that it was because his marriage was that important to him that he wasn't going to let that get in the way. I know you were kind of teasing me, but to your point.
Yeah. I mean, either way, you're going to have to deal with it, right? One way or the other, you're going to have to fix it. And you don't need all those kinds of distractions, which it sounds like she had the crucial conversation.
Yeah.
And I know you like to talk about having crucial conversations, but at the same point, people tend to be avoidant. I mean, she let it go for 10 years. Why do people avoid the conversations they need to have?
Yeah, so I want to answer that question, but let me back up and say, what is a crucial conversation? So a crucial conversation is anytime emotions and stakes are high, which in this case, the story I just told you, the stakes were very, very high. But every leader is confronted or needs to have crucial conversations every day. And so my definition of great leaders are those that are most willing and most capable of having a crucial conversation. So they're most willing, they recognize the need, they're willing to take it on, and they have the skills. A confrontation is a little like a fight. And what do we do when we fight? Well, or when we're confronted with conflict or tension or the saber-toothed tiger? Well, we have 3 options. One is we avoid, like you just mentioned. The other one is we fight, okay? Or we do it, we take it on, but we do a bad job. And so if you're in a world where you are going to have crucial conversations, wouldn't it behoove you to become better at it instead of avoiding, so that you develop the skills, the willingness, the recognition that doing the crucial conversation and doing it well is the route to path to becoming better, getting better results in the business, better results in for my culture, for the team, and better results in every aspect of my life.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. There's a great book I recommend on this called Crucial Conversations. You've got it back there somewhere. It's written by a number of college professors, which makes it sound like it might be a textbook. It does lay out a process and a way to think about skill development, but does that in a really good, engaging way. And One of the ways that it's worked for my clients is to kind of have a book club. And what I mean by that is you can break that into a 5 session, 10 session. Let's have a pizza over lunch on Friday, read a chapter, and then circle back and work together to build our skills and how to have crucial conversations and how to have good ones. Are you looking at the book? I'm
I have
guessing.
it right here. I
There
was
you
trying to
go.
figure out because this is not a new book, 2012.
Yeah, it's been
It's
a
been
while.
around for a while,
Yeah,
and it is the one that everybody recommends for
yeah.
when you have to have difficult conversations
Well, I
that
think it's
are important.
one of the key skills a business owner needs. Crucial conversations, and it sort of ties back to something else you said, which is how do you, as a business owner, get better at SOPs? Well, how do you get better at delegating? Well, all of that again ties back to having crucial conversations. So it's a virtuous circle. Is to get good at crucial conversations means so many other things in your life are going to get better.
Which also kind of leads to the other question of how do you get the great people you want for your business? Because for a lot of business owners, it's a struggle to find people. And it's
Yeah,
getting harder, I think.
it definitely is. I learned a very valuable lesson at the age of about 22. I was a manager of a tip-top menswear store in a shopping center in Calgary. Calgary in the 70s grew from about 100,000 to about 500,000 people. And in that space, nobody was moving to Calgary to work in retail. They were moving to Calgary because the oil business was booming and there's lots of great salaries and wages to be had. And so it was very difficult hiring. One of the practices I had with my manager is once every 3 months, we would tour the mall where I was the manager, and my job was to point out the two best salespeople that weren't yet working for me. In other words, I was recruiting before I had a need. And so I would bump into these people by accident in the food court and chat them up. And I'd be peeking around the corner at their store to see what they were doing and how they were doing it. And so a business owner spends a ton of time going to get customers. We only recruit or put the effort into acquiring good people when there's a need. And usually that need is the result of someone quitting and it's caused a crisis in the business or some great difficulty. And now we're scrambling. Well, wouldn't you change how you did things? And the guy showed up late for the third time in a row in a week and for the 10th time this month. And you're biting your tongue because you don't want to say anything to the guy because if the guy quit, you're hooped. Well, how do you change that dynamic? You have to have a bench. You have to have a backbench. You have to have a farm team. And what that means, if any one of your key people, for some reason or another, needed to be replaced, there are 5 phone calls you could make the next day to people who you've already had a relationship. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. I'm not saying it's easy, but what I'm saying is that flips the switch. It flips the game because now you're the one who has options. Because if your guy's late 3 times in a row and 10 times that month, who's got options? That guy does because you're biting your tongue. You're not having the crucial conversation because the consequence of doing that badly, or if it doesn't go the way you want, that guy quits. Oh my God. Well, how do you change that dynamic? Well, you've got to have options.
I have found more often than not when we deal with these situations and they finally pull the trigger, which is months later than they should have,
Yeah.
the outcomes are usually dramatically to the positive side.
Yeah. Most of the time, in my experience, when someone gets fired because they're underperforming, the rest of your team will come up to you and say, what took you so long? That guy's
And
been a bum and we've known it. We've been covering his backside forever. And, thankfully you finally did something about it.
which is what drives me up the wall. It's like, why didn't you say something?
Well, because there's an odd place. So here's the caution. And part of the answer to your question is that when you let someone go, you have to do it with dignity and grace and treat that person with respect. And the backstory is the Stockholm syndrome. So the Stockholm syndrome is a thing that occurred the first time an airplane got hijacked. It sat on the tarmac in Stockholm for something like a week. And in that time, the passengers who were stuck and kind of hijacked on the plane switched their kind of allegiance and loyalty from the officials who were trying to negotiate. They started supporting the views, the agenda of the hijackers, their mindset, their psychology changed. And so when you let someone go, they'll applaud you for doing it, but they'll also watch you very carefully in how you do it because they want to know if it ever happened to me, am I going to get treated appropriately, with respect, with dignity, treated in the right way out the doors? If you're going to fire someone, do it the right way. You don't do it for that person anymore. You do it for the rest of the team so they can see you're going to do it right.
You're constantly sending out signals.
Exactly.
And so you have to be careful of the signals you send. And hopefully they match your values and your culture. But again, that's another area that businesses don't spend enough time
Exactly.
in defining what their value and cultures is. And more
Exactly
important
right.
than defining it and putting it on the wall, it's living it.
Living it. Exactly right. So here's the way to think about it. You don't get the culture you want, you get the culture you deserve. If you're a business owner, you don't get the culture you want, you get the one you deserve. And what does that mean? You get the culture that's the result of how you conduct yourself, the signals you send, the way that you enforce the rules that you have. If you want a great culture, you need to be working at your culture. Lots of business owners think of culture as kind of an oofy poofy sort of thing, kind of a thing at the cherry at the top of the cake. In fact, it's just the opposite. It's the foundation. If you can get your culture right, the rest of the managing the team, managing the business becomes so much easier if you can get everybody on the same page with the same set of values.
And we've talked about this many times. Love to hear your opinion, but we tell people you have to hire to values. You can always train skills, but it's very difficult to train values.
Absolutely correct. Hire for culture, train for skills. And the reverse of that is people don't get fired for skills, they get fired for culture. And so many times the people that we hang on to, which are bad culture, is because we value their skills and afraid of losing it. And yet they're act as a poison, I'm going to say, or a very negative influence on the company, and you just put up with it. Hire for culture, train for skills.
We call them terrorists.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what they are. Yeah, terrorists in their own workforce.
Is there anything we should have talked about but didn't get a chance to?
There's loads. But the bottom line is this: if you're feeling, let me put it this way: what's the purpose of business? Well, if you talk to a $50 million business or a $100 million business or bigger businesses, you're going to get a different answer than the one I'm going to offer you. The real purpose of a small business, the one doing $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, the purpose of that business is to give its owner the life they want. The purpose of your life is not business. The purpose of life is to live your life. And yet, so often what happens is we get wrapped around the axle of the business that it takes over our life. And so if there's anything you might take away from our time together today, it's this: if your business is not supporting your life, what is it supporting?
And I'm a big believer. The purpose of business is to make money, enough money that the business can thrive and you're not waking up worried about payroll next week.
Exactly.
And the business owner's personal dreams are met and satisfied, that they get they went into business for freedom and for money. And if they don't have the time, freedom, and the money, then your business is broken.
Yeah.
Let us fix it. That's really what it comes down to.
That's the question I leave you to think about yourself. Is your business serving your life? If the answer to that is yes, congratulations, you're a very special and rare person. And if the answer to that is no, there's a way to get help.
And I think people think that it's a long road to solve that problem. And yes, it may take time, but it doesn't take a lot to look at the business model and say, you know, if we make these couple of tweaks, we can go from where you are to where you want to be. And every business, some businesses can move fast, some take time.
Yeah.
But the point is, I think over a couple of years, we can turn most businesses around or pivot to a business that truly serves the business owner. And once they understand how it works, they can make it work.
You know, to address that, lots of business owners think taking on an advisor like you or me is very risky. They're not sure it's going to work. But here's what I know for sure. I promise, I'll guarantee that you'll agree coaching's paid for itself within 4 months, or I do it for free. So your life can be infinitely better in 4 months. It won't be perfect, but the hot burning fire you're feeling will be turned down to the point where you're starting to feel comfortable and recognize there's a better way in 4 months.
True.
Yeah.
If people would like to learn more about you and your services, where can they find you?
I'm easy to find, W5 Coaching. I'm a practitioner of a thing called the Socratic method of leadership. Socrates said the best way to help somebody is to help them figure it out themselves. And you do that by helping people think through what their problems are. And the best way to do that is to guide them through a series of questions. And of course, the 5 core questions are who, what, when, where, why. W5 Coaching.
There you go. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Hey, thanks for listening to the entire unedited video of the Profit Answer Man podcast. You can actually get the full podcast in audio only format here on YouTube or any other of your favorite podcast players. Don't forget to go check out episodes 1 through 13. They lay out the foundation of Profit First in the book and how to get started. In addition, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to check out. And if you remember to subscribe, you'll always be updated when we put a new one out every single week. Thanks for listening. Have a profitable week.